The Lost Tribes of London. These days, there aren't as many punks on the streets of London as there used to be. Despite the postcards, in the souvenir shops of extravagantly hairstyled punks with their studded leather jackets and nose piercings, original punk died as a mass expression of youth culture, more than 20 years ago. Punks were just one phase of a series of youth tribes, each distinguished by different clothes, hairstyles and tastes in music. The second half of the 20th century saw a never-ending stream of fashions, each of which lasted for a few years before becoming terminally old-fashioned. To celebrate the rich heritage of Britain's youth culture, here is our brief guide to some of the most influential tribes of the past 50 years. Teddy boys and girls Teds began appearing on the streets of Britain in the early 1950s, and they were one of the first manifestations of youth culture. They came, on the whole, from working-class backgrounds, but spent huge amounts of money on clothes, long, knee-length velvet jackets, straight, flowery waistcoats and wide-collared shirts. The boys wore their hair long and greased back with a prominent quiff at the front, and the girls wore American-style ponytails. Teds listened and danced to rock and roll, and their appearance scared the British public. In the violent London riots of 1958, Teds took part in the racist attacks on the black population. Hippies. Disillusioned with corporate America, middle-aged, middle-class values and their country's involvement in the Vietnam War, many young Americans in the late 1960s adopted an alternative lifestyle and came to be known as hippies. They showed their rejection of Western material values by turning to the East. Ethnic, Indian-inspired jewelry and clothes were in, with flared denim jeans and loose tops with flowery of psychedelic patterns. Men wore long hair and beards. Some people lived in easy-going communes, others followed Eastern religions, and many young people in Britain soon copied their American counterparts, and the hippie slogans of peace and love and no nuclear bombs became common on his side of the Atlantic. Punks. Punks made their first appearance in Britain in about 1976. They were anti-fashion, anti-hippie, anti-establishment, anti-everything. To begin with, there was no particular style. Their music was a mixture of rock and reggae among other genres. They wore ripped or scruffy clothes, T-shirts with provocative slogans, and studs or safety pins as jewelry. The most popular band was the Sex Pistols, led by the sneering, cynical Johnny Rotten. Following a TV appearance, when the Sex Pistols shocked the country with their appearance and their swearing, newspapers rushed to report on the new trend. Inspired by the newspaper stories and by the disapproval of their parents, young people across the country with their adopted the new fashion very quickly. But the creativity and originality of the early punks was soon replaced by unimaginative copying. Studded leather jackets and wild, shocking pink hairstyles became a uniform, and the punks themselves became tourist attractions. Goths first came on the scene in the early 1980s as punk fashions became more and more uniform. Inspired by horror novels and movies, both boys and girls dressed in black 19th-century style clothes and wore dark makeup. As a result of their portrayal in the press, it was often thought that Goths worshipped the devil or were obsessed with death, but there was never really any set of beliefs associated with being a Goth. Early Goths listened to The Cure or Suede and the Banshees, originally a punk band, but more recently, they are more likely to be fans of Marilyn Manson.